What is going on, world? What's up, YouTube? It's Zero here. Today I'm bringing you guys a brand new episode of The Resistance. Welcome everyone to The Resistance, guys, the best Watch Dogs podcast here on YouTube. And I'm super excited about our episode here today. We have a lot of stuff to talk about, so let's get into it. I want to welcome all of you to the show. For those of you watching live on Twitch, what's up, guys? Thanks for being here. I really appreciate it. To our second episode of The Resistance, already to our second episode. And in today's episode, we're going to go ahead and go through all of the topics of the show. And then also, guys, I want to give you guys a little bit of a recap of our scheduled programming that you guys can expect on Twitch as well as on YouTube. So with that, guys, let's get right into it. Our topics of the day, guys, on The Resistance episode 2, we're going to be talking about some of the characters within Watch Dogs Legion in particular, and then we're going to continue talking about Watch Dogs as a franchise and how we as a community can help continue the growth of the franchise moving forward. I also want to talk about the play as anyone mechanic that's coming to Watch Dogs Legion and the pros and cons that this will introduce. And then lastly, guys, I want to talk about some of the multiplayer modes within Watch Dogs Legion and what exactly they could be maybe bringing back from Watch Dogs 2 to Watch Dogs Legion, and just kind of give you guys some updates as to, you know, what we can expect moving forward here. And so with that, guys, that's going to be the show. And I would like to, of course, kind of give you guys a recap of where we are as far as the scheduled programming is concerned. So every Monday, guys, you can expect the Gears cast, which is our Gears of War podcast. Tuesday, of course, is the Resistance, which is the Watch Dogs podcast. This is every single Tuesday you can expect new episodes of the Resistance. On Wednesday, you can expect Zero Dark, which is our Call of Duty podcast. And then on Thursday is the Last Cast, which is the Last of Us podcast. Friday is For the Swarm, which is the StarCraft podcast. And then on Saturday is the 8 Below show. And Sunday is our Zero Questions, Zero Answers, which is our Q&A show. So that's the scheduled programming, guys. Every single day, there are shows coming out for all of you to take in and content on a consistent basis that you'll be able to take in. So really excited about it. And that is the scheduled programming at this point in time. So with that out of the way, guys, let's get into our first topic of the day as far as the characters are concerned here. So we don't know a ton about a lot of the characters in particular with DedSec. However, we do know a little bit about some of our villains in this story. So what I want to talk about here, guys, is as far as the plot is concerned. So let's just talk about it. We're not going to go into like insane detail exactly, but I do want to talk more in particular about DedSec and then, of course, the villains here. So the game is set in the near future after the UK left the European Union. This is coming to us, guys, from the Watch Dogs fandom wiki page. And the accelerating rise of automation and AI has left millions of people unemployed, wiping out both blue and white-collar jobs. The economy is collapsing, the government is losing power, and cryptocurrencies have overtaken the pound. Organized crime is sweeping over London. A crime syndicate known as Clan Kelly, led by the notorious boss Mary Kelly, control everything through the dark web, and people are being taken from their homes, passed into deportation centers, whose wardens are on Clan Kelly's payroll, and has the immigrants trafficked into slavery or harvest of their organs to sell in the black market. People who speak up get investigated and at times disappear. Amidst the backdrop, players recruit and control members of the hacker collective DedSec who seek justice for ordinary people by fighting the various enemy factions trying to rise to power in London. So, here's what we'll say, guys. The story focuses on the efforts of the London branch of DedSec in combating an authoritarian regimen that has taken control of the United Kingdom by a PMC group known as Albion, led by its sadistic leader Nigel Cass, thanks to the CTOS provided by Bloom. To assist in this, DedSec recruits allies from across the city in order to liberate the city as a resistance force. Each character in the game will have their own background and skill set and provide a more dynamic influence to the game's narrative as the story progresses. So, all right, so let's talk about this. So, who is the main character here in Watch Dogs Legion? Well, see, the beautiful thing about this game, to me at least, guys, is that it's not so much any one individual. It's the collaboration of an entire group, that being DedSec, which is a very interesting, dynamic here, and it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out throughout the course of the game, which we'll get to here later in the show. But I want to talk also here about Mary Kelly as well as Nigel Cass. So you've got these two bosses or, leaders, one of Albion and then the other, of course, of Clan Kelly. And what I got to say about it is what's interesting is Ubisoft as a company, we've seen this, of course, with Far Cry. They took the Far Cry franchise in this direction where it became more about the villains or the main villain than about even our own character that we played as within the story, which is a really interesting concept. And I feel like they may be trying some similar things here with Watch Dogs Legion. It's hard to say if they're definitely going to do that, but I have a feeling that they're moving in this direction where they don't want us necessarily to connect with any one individual character. They want us to connect more with the villain, similar to that of Far Cry, which obviously we'll have to kind of wait and see if this is exactly what they're planning on doing, because it doesn't seem that DedSec, there's any one individual with the play as anyone, mechanic in this game. They certainly don't want you to connect to any one individual character. They want you to know what the goal is at large and kind of work together as a team to accomplish that, which I think is a really interesting concept. And so with Nigel Cass as well as Mary Kelly, those two being primarily the main characters. Now, we'll have to wait and see, guys. When the game comes out, we'll see if there's any characters that we connect with from DedSec in particular, which I'm sure there's going to be some memorable characters, but is it going to be something like Nigel Cass or Mary Kelly is yet to be seen. It just reminds me a lot of what Far Cry has done, where they put so much emphasis on the villain versus that of the main character, or the playable character, I should say. Even, the good guys, so to speak, it seems like they put a lot of emphasis on the villain, which is a very interesting concept, and I think there might be more of the same here with Watch Dogs Legion. But with that, guys, who would you guys say is the main character in Watch Dogs Legion? Would you say it's one of the villains? Do you think that it's DedSec as a whole? What do you guys think about it? Let's have a real conversation about it. Our second topic of the day and of the show, I want to talk about the community, that being the Watch Dogs community at large, and ways in which we as a community can help continue growth here in the franchise. So when I look on Twitch, guys, when I look on YouTube, and I look for content regarding Watch Dogs, certainly there are people who create content, there are people who stream the game, but it's not as much as, say, other games and other franchises out there. Let's kind of keep it grounded with, say, the Ubisoft IPs out there. So you look at Far Cry, you look at Assassin's Creed, of course, The Division, you look at Rainbow Six, you look at a number of these games, right? And most of them get better viewership than Watch Dogs, and which is really interesting to me because, when you look at Watch Dogs, it's a full package. It has, campaign, multiplayer elements, and things of that nature. Some of these other games that Ubisoft makes does not have any other modes outside of the campaign or the story mode. And so what I'm getting at here is, how can we, as a fan base of Watch Dogs, how can we continue growing the scene moving forward? And so I think what it really comes down to, guys, and I talk ad nauseum about this when it comes to just IPs in general from these companies, but I think that when you look at the landscape of gaming and you look at all of the games out there that have really passionate fan bases, but more than that, they have a thriving, fan base because of the amount of content that's coming out from that game. More eyeballs are watching that game from a streaming perspective and such. You look at that, And the reason is because you've got people that are supporting each other. You have a lot of those things. You also just have people in general that are creating content or streaming the game. I think the problem with Watch Dogs is that there's a lack of, not necessarily a fan base, because I believe that there's a thriving fan base here, but I think the problem, to me at least, is that there's a lack of really supporting one another when it comes to, from a content creation perspective, from a streaming perspective. There's not a lot of people who stream the game. I think moving from Watch Dogs 2, and we kind of have learned now what we've done right, wrong, and what we can do different moving forward. The same can be said for Ubisoft from Watch Dogs 2 to Watch Dogs Legion. I think we as a community need to be creating more content. We need to be streaming more. And then people who watch the game and really love the game need to be supporting that. They need to be watching the streams, watching the content on YouTube. And I think if we do those things and then we support Ubisoft and kind of give our opinion in a civil way as to what we think needs to be changed and such, then it's kind of in Ubisoft's court to kind of make those changes and such to make the experience as good as possible. But I think at the end of the day, guys, it really comes down to us as a community really growing this thing out. Ubisoft's going to do what they can do with marketing and things of that nature, but it comes down to us as a community, those of us who love Watch Dogs, to, really kind of put it out there and get more and more eyeballs on the game. So, like for myself, I felt to myself personally, I create so much different types of content on YouTube when it comes to different games and IPs and such. And that's why I decided, one big reason why I decided to kind of have more centralized focus on specific games. One of those being, of course, Watch Dogs, with this show being The Resistance. I felt that there was a need within the Watch Dogs community to have a show, or at least do my part in trying to help the growth of this franchise, because it's one I really enjoy, one that I want to see continued for, into the next generation of consoles, and then of course, guys, have more and more iterations of this franchise moving forward, because I think it's one of those games that's been really underrated by Ubisoft. It's just been one of those games that kind of gets overlooked because of games like Assassin's Creed, games like Rainbow Six, even Far Cry. And so Watch Dogs, though, I think has a really, it's got a special place, and it needs to coexist with these other games in the landscape of gaming as a whole. And so the way that we do that, though, is by us as a community continuing to create content, creating to stream, and then for those of us who just enjoy it, we watch those streams, we watch that content on YouTube. That really helps just building the audience and the fan base that is Watch Dogs as a whole, guys. It'd be great to see, Ubisoft do some sort of, creator programs or something where, they support, creators and streamers and such for creating content around Watch Dogs. It kind of gives more of an incentive to continue creating content and talking about these games and such, which I'm not sure if they do that at this point, guys. I don't know if they're planning on doing that for Watch Dogs Legion, but things like that really help to get people to talk about your game, and it gets you to, create content around it, and then that brings more eyeballs, so on and so forth. So I really want to, I kind of just want to throw it out there that I think that if you're really into Watch Dogs and you are a content creator or you're a streamer, to stream the game, to create content around the game and talk about it. And I think that that's, I think this is an untapped IP that not lots of people really, create content or stream around. I mean, we look at like Watch Dogs 2 and what, how many people are streaming that on a given basis. Some people might be doing it because Watch Dogs Legion is coming, but I think it's really important, guys, that when Watch Dogs Legion comes out, there's going to be a lot of people playing the game. I mean, I think it's going to be probably one of the biggest launches for the Watch Dogs franchise in particular, but it's up to us as a community to sustain that after the game launches. It's going to be up to us. I mean, sure, Ubisoft has to do their part, but we have to do our part to really continue the growth of this franchise moving forward. And so with that, guys, I would love to hear your guys' thoughts about this. And look, it really comes down to us as a community. And I say this all the time, like in the Gears cast, I talk about this as well, because Gears of War is another one of those games where there are people creating content around it, and the fan base is growing over time, but it's really up to us to continue creating content and bringing in those those people that, might not really have even heard much of Gears of War, but then after, watching, when there's so X amounts of people that are creating content and streaming the game, they might just try it out and just see what it's all about. And that just brings more people to the scene, or more people to the game as a whole. And so I just think that's really important, especially, guys, with this being a new game coming out in the Watch Dogs franchise. It's kind of almost like a fresh start. It's not called Watch Dogs 3. This is Watch Dogs Legion, and I think that this is going to be a great place for new people to come into the Watch Dogs franchise, and it'll be a great place for us who have played the game and been a part of this franchise in the past to continue really, trying to build off of what was established, but kind of even take it to further heights. It's really going to come down to that, guys. But let me know. Let's have a real conversation about it, guys. Are you guys, excited about what Watch Dogs Legion could really bring to the table for us as a community? And what do you guys think we need to do in order to move this franchise forward in a positive direction? Let's have a real conversation about it. The play as anyone mechanic that's been put into Watch Dogs Legion, I believe, is one that is incredibly unique, guys. I think it's one that is going to actually really put this, kind of separate this franchise from other games out there, because it's a really interesting one where you're able to play as anyone within the game. And I think that is something that is going to make this game somewhat special. This gets to what I was talking about earlier in the show, about the main characters that are in Watch Dogs Legion. And I think that the idea here was that, Ubisoft wanted to go ahead and kind of take away the main characters and make this more of a game where it's based around DedSec. It's based around the culmination in the entirety of an organization versus that of just some individuals. It's about the team. It's not about the I, it's all about the team and what you got to do in order to obtain victory, obtain, winning this war in the game and in the universe. Well, I love that concept, guys, as a play as anyone. However, will the play as anyone mechanic take us out of the experience as a whole? I'll give you guys my opinion here. I'd love to hear yours in the comment section down below. So with that, guys, the play as anyone mechanic, I believe this being such a unique mechanic to Watch Dogs Legion, I do not think that it is going to fully take us out of the experience, because I think if you go into the experience knowing that you're able to play as anybody, and it's not necessarily about just any one individual character, it's about the totality of this group, kind of taking on the, Albion and Clan Kelly and all of that. When you think of it from that perspective, and that going into this game, I don't think it's going to take you out of the experience. Now, will there be characters that we play as that we're going to connect with better than others? There's certainly a possibility of that. I'm sure there's going to be certain playable characters that we like more than others. To me, though, guys, I think that this is a really cool concept, and I like the idea here for the play as anyone. Once again, I stated this earlier, but I think what Ubisoft is doing is similar to what they did with the Far Cry games. Pretty much from like Far Cry 3 to now, they've really put emphasis on the villain, like the main villain within Far Cry, and then the playable character we play as a lot of times doesn't speak, and when they do, it's not necessarily a memorable ordeal. Like the playable character is not the focal point. The focal point is the villain within Far Cry, and I feel like they're doing this similar here with Watch Dogs Legion. You look at Nigel Cass. There's definitely an emphasis on the villains here in Watch Dogs Legion. Now, certainly there's an emphasis on DedSec, but that's the totality, the entire group, guys, that you're going to be, recruiting people, you're going to try to build something around. And so what I'm getting at here is that I think that the entire idea here is that we really connect more so with DedSec as a whole. And then, of course, we also connect with the villains, because I think what Ubisoft does really good with the Far Cry games is they make you really start to want to take down the villain. Generally speaking, within the Far Cry games, they do a really good job of crafting these characters in Far Cry that are just sadistic, villains and such that you want to take down, like in a major way. And it's all they're the ones that are always in the back of your mind. It's not necessarily the other characters within the game. And so with Watch Dogs Legion, I feel like we're going to connect with DedSec as a whole. And then, of course, trying to take down these villains that are kind of in the forefront, or like kind of front and center. They're the ones that's like, this is the goal. We got to obtain this goal no matter what it takes. And we as a group, as a team, have to do that. And I just love that concept. Now, is it definitely going to work? I mean, it's hard to say, guys. We're going to have to wait till the game comes out. But I love the concept here. It's different. And see, I think with gaming, guys, we have to look at, when there's differences and they change things up from like one game to another, I really have been a believer that Watch Dogs needed a little bit of some change. Now, I wasn't necessarily expecting the play as anyone, mechanic coming into Watch Dogs Legion, but I'm open to it without a doubt, because I think in order to progress the game and the franchise forward, sometimes you have to evolve, because if you don't evolve, a lot of times the games that don't evolve and don't really change much will just kind of go the way of the dinosaur over time. They will be forgotten about. They won't have continuations whatsoever. They'll be put into a limbo state or a state of no return. So I just think that this is very good. The concept of all the masks and all of the, that each character has their own identity, but it's an identity that a lot of times you can't see. And I just love that concept here. And so all in all, do I think that the play as anyone mechanic is going to take you out of the experience? I don't believe so. I think that it's, as long as you go into this game knowing that this isn't about any individual character, it's all about DedSec as a whole taking down these main villains that are front and center. So I think that's the idea, guys. Think of Far Cry, think of some of those other games, even though it's a totally different, game, but this is Ubisoft, once again, trying to be creative when it comes to the villains, trying to be creative when it comes down to the gameplay mechanics and such. I couldn't be more excited about this game, guys, and kind of the play as anyone, I think, is a special part of what this game is gonna present to us as in its totality. So with that, I want to hear from you guys, though. Will this play as anyone mechanic take you out of the experience? Let me know in the comment section down below, and let's have a real conversation about it. So the question is, guys, is when we look at Watch Dogs Legion, what's been confirmed at this point in time is that there's a real emphasis on playing as anyone. There's an emphasis on co-op play, but it's being reported that Watch Dogs Legion is not going to really have any traditional multiplayer modes, which is something that if anyone over at Ubisoft is watching this video, and this, of course, this podcast, I really believe that there needs to be modes outside of co-op and, of course, the single-player campaign that are going to keep us coming back to the game after we beat the story. Now, there's been talk of an endgame content, which I'm not sure exactly what all that's going to be, if they're going to have other DLC and things of that nature. Is the endgame content going to be similar to The Division? It's hard to say. But all in all, I want to talk about the multiplayer modes here. So this is, of course, coming to us from Wikipedia, from Watch Dogs 2 and what the multiplayer had. So obviously, multiplayer returned, of course, in Watch Dogs 2. The game introduces a seamless cooperative multiplayer mode in which players can interact with other random players. They can explore the world and complete missions together, which will also help players to gain followers. So Hacking Invasion was one of them, which was a 1 versus 1 competitive multiplayer mode originally featured in the first game, in which a player covertly joins another player's single-player session and steals virtual data from them. Then there was Bounty Hunter, a mode introduced in the game. If an online player creates too much chaos in the world, the mode will be initiated. Showdown is a mode added in an update. In this mode, 2 teams of 2 players battle each other in short missions. Then there's, of course, Racing, a mode added in an update. Up to 4 players compete in head-to-head races to reach the finish line with drones, e-carts, boats, and bikes, which Racing was really cool in my personal opinion. Man versus Machine, a mode added in an update. Up to 4 players work together to take down a machine in a narrow time frame. And then there's Loot Trucks, a mode added in an update. Up to 4 players compete in a head-to-head battle to steal a valuable box from a truck and escape the police and other players. Now, so we look at all those modes, guys, and what I gotta say is this. The modes are very unique, and that's something I love about Watch Dogs, just as a franchise. It's a unique game mode, or game modes, that are kind of specific to Watch Dogs in the Watch Dogs universe. Now, would I like there to be other modes where they're a little bit more traditional, like team deathmatch or something like that? Sure, I think that would be cool, but I love that there's a lot of creativity here. Now, with Watch Dogs Legion, the endgame content is the most intriguing to me. If this is something similar to like The Division, I think that there could be, you know, lots and lots of hours to put into the game even after you're done beating the game. Now, how much they're updating the endgame content or how much they're, you know, creating new game modes is another conversation, but honestly, guys, I would love them to bring some of these game modes back because I think it just adds to, even if you have endgame content and you have like new DLC that comes out and such, this still adds more to it. It kind of gives you that feeling like Hacking Invasion, okay? This was originally in the first game, came back with Watch Dogs 2. Hacking Invasion it's just one of those games that is known to the Watch Dogs franchise, or one of those game modes that's known to it. And so all I'm getting at is the more content that you put into the game is the more content that we can get out of it, that we can play and such. And sure, there's going to be some modes that are more popular than others. Maybe what Watch Dogs Legion and Ubisoft wants to do is they want everyone to play that endgame content and it becomes something like a Red Dead Online or a GTA Online or something of that nature where you're playing, you play these multiplayer modes within this world and it's consistently updated over time. Now, if they decide to do something like that, I'm sure that could work out really great. I just don't know exactly how they're planning on doing it. If that endgame content is going to be very similar to The Division. Is it going to be like Watch Dogs Online? What is it going to be exactly? All I can tell you guys is that from a outsider's perspective, and I know that the multiplayer in Watch Dogs 2 was not very popular. I mean, it's not something that people come back to consistently, so maybe they wanted to freshen it up with the endgame content and add, like, new DLC as time goes with Watch Dogs Legion. But what I will tell you is this. This is more opportunity to connect with the franchise as a whole when Watch Dogs Legion does release. I just think that the more content you have, the better. We look at Call of Duty, for example, and sure, Call of Duty is a massive franchise, one of the biggest in the world, but what Call of Duty has done is they've added new modes throughout the course of time with their different games, and a lot of people thought, oh, this is going to split the fan base in multiple different directions, but what it did was, guys, it just gave you more options. It's not necessarily that because they added some new, some new game modes, or they added the BR, which is Warzone. It's not that everyone's playing the BR and then no one's playing the other multiplayer modes. No, there are still very much so a dedicated amount of people playing the other multiplayer modes. It's all about how you execute it. And so even if, let's just say, Watch Dogs Legion, they only brought back Hacking Invasion, at least there's something else that you can do outside of the endgame content, outside of waiting for the DLC, outside of playing the campaign with your friends or with, by yourself. It just gives you more ways to connect with it. It helps content creators and streamers be able to create more content around it as well, because there's more ways to connect with the game outside of the co-op or the, just the single player story. Even having co-op modes where it's like PvE, where you're going up against the elements, like, you know, having missions and such, co-op missions. I think all of that stuff really helps build something here. Watch Dogs reminds me at times of games like Grand Theft Auto, so having something that's like a GTA Online, I would be totally down with that. At the end of the day, though, guys, we just don't know what the endgame content is all going to encompass at this point, but I do think taking certain things from the past, kind of giving a kudos to the past, but also taking things from the past that worked and try to kind of, you know, re-flesh them out or you know, kind of put them together in a, change them and kind of keep something similar but some things different, I think could really help some of these game modes. And I'm not saying that all of them should be returning to Watch Dogs Legion. I'm just saying that the more content that you put into Watch Dogs Legion, the more ways that we as a community can continue connecting with it, creating content, streaming, talking about it in the Reddit forums and things of that nature. So I think it's really important, guys. And if you ask me which multiplayer mode should return, I would say Hacking Invasion. I think something along the lines of racing. Each of them could have, you know, modes within the overarching endgame content that could be like Watch Dogs Online or something. I think there's a lot of different ways that they could do it. I'm just hoping that there's plenty of ways to connect with Watch Dogs Legion after the credits roll in the campaign. But let me know, guys, in the comment section down below, which multiplayer modes would you want to return? What modes would you like to see, you know, come at some point or another, you know, for, you know, Watch Dogs Legion? Let me know what you guys think, and let's have a real conversation about it. And with that being said, everyone, I hope you guys did enjoy this episode of The Resistance. And if you guys did, leave a thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, stay positive, and as always, I'll talk to you guys all in the next one. Peace.